Mastering plugins. People like to keep it a secret. People like to think that it's some great mystical thing that you can't learn. It's wrong. You can. Today, as it's Black Friday season and Cyber season, where there's lots of discounts, I'm going to take you through all the plugins that I'm using in my mastering process at the moment. Let's do it. Okay, so in front of me, I've got a mastering session for an album. This is something that I'm working on at the moment. So this is absolutely currently my mastering process. It's important to say with mastering that there are multiple different ways of doing it. Some people will master with analog gear only. Some people will master with a hybrid of in the box and hardware. Some people will master totally in the box. I've experimented with all of those things. At the moment, I'm mastering just in the box because it's just much easier for my workflow. I can send something off to a client, they can come back with anything they want to adjust, and I can pull up the project and adjust quickly and easily without having to recall settings in hardware and all that kind of stuff. So I'm mastering just in the box at the moment. If you look quickly at this session, you'll see that I've got all the songs on an individual track, and then I've got a parallel bus for each track. So every track is being sent post-fader to a parallel bus. I'll talk about that in a moment. You'll see that I've got the on-off switch for each track visible up in the project. That means that if I want to switch between songs, I can just turn off the song that I'm working on, turn on the one that I want to hear. What that means is that I can keep all of my plugins all kind of preloaded because they're all quite CPU hungry, because some of them are mastering plugins specifically. They take up quite a lot of processing power, and having them all on all those individual tracks, it could mean that my session gets really kind of bogged down, which I don't want. So I make sure that I can turn things off when I'm not using them to make sure that the CPU doesn't get too laggy, which is important. Now, let me tell you the main objective of mastering in the first place. Objective number one is to sort out any minor equalization issues, if there are any small things to adjust. Objective two is to make sure the mix dynamically is where you want it and loud enough where you want it. Objective three is to make sure there are no specific technical errors. And objective four is to make sure that the mix is interesting and dynamic and has range and variety to it and isn't all just absolutely slammed like a sausage. So with that in mind, we're going to start looking at this process. So let's take a look at this track here. The song is called Scars and Stories. You'll see that it's being sent post-fader to this bus here, bus 2, which is just a multipressor. So this is basically doing parallel compression across the whole mix, and I'm able to blend that in with the mix in order to give me a bit of extra loudness. So what I'll do is, first of all, I'll play you this little bit of chorus with everything on, everything engaged, and then we're going to take it all off and we'll build it up together. So here it is. Okay, so I'm going to bypass everything that's on the master bus. I'm going to bypass everything that's on the individual channel, and I'll bypass the bus send. So this is now the mix as it's come into this session raw. It's obviously going to be a lot quieter. So much quieter. But the important thing to notice is that having heard the mastered version and the mix as it's come in, they're not sounding wildly different fundamentally. It's not like I've changed completely the whole feel of the song. I've taken the mix and I've enhanced it and just given it that polish and sparkle that a master needs. Now, one crucial thing to draw attention to is if you look at the waveform of the mix as it's come in, there's no massive dynamic variety. There are no wildly kind of huge peaks that are going to make controlling dynamics difficult. And if I look across all of these tracks, they're all very similarly controlled in the mix stage. They've got a nice kind of consistent bit of loudness, and then there's some transient information coming through. But there's no kind of great dynamic variety that is going to make this mastering process tricky. And that's important, because if the mix that you've got coming in has already got dynamic issues to it, it's going to make your job harder as a mastering engineer. It doesn't make it impossible, it just makes it a bit more tricky. So that aside, this parallel bus then, let's listen to the difference that this makes on and off. So it's just adding a bit of thickness, a bit of extra loudness. It's not going to be doing anything in terms of adding transient content, because it's not going to be reaching the same peaks as the original mix, because it's quieter and it's totally squashed. But what it's going to be doing is just helping to bring up the loudness a little bit. And you'll see throughout this process, I'm going to do lots of little bits of adding a bit of loudness, adding a bit of loudness. So if we listen to that bus just on its own, you can see it's pretty slammed, right? If you want to pause it and take a grab of those settings, then by all means do. They're not particularly special or fancy. It's just multi-band slamming the mix to give you know, a really kind of completely squashed thing to blend back in with the mix. So that's in already. I'm actually going to bypass that for now, because I want to take notice of all the other things. So the way that I like to structure it at the moment is, on the individual channel, I'm doing equalization things that are subtly changing the sound of the mix. And then on the master bus, I'm doing effectively dynamic things. So compression, limiting, that sort of stuff. So over on the track individually first, the first thing that I'll put on is Gullfoss Mastering EQ. Now, when you buy Gullfoss, you get 3 different versions of it. You get a kind of a normal version, and you get a live version, and you get a master version. The live version, I believe, is 0 latency to be used in live applications. The normal version is, you know, kind of normal CPU consumption type thing. And the master version is CPU heavy. It's kind of higher fidelity, and therefore uses up more processing. So I'm using the mastering version. Okay, so what I'd normally do with this plugin is I'm first of all using the low pass down to about 12K, because it can get a little bit aggressive in the high end. Then what I'm doing is I'm changing my scale so that I can see 1.5 dB of reduction or attenuation. And then I'm basically dialing in the recovery and the tame, so that I'm getting a maximum of like 1.5 dB in either direction. So let me show you how I do that. So I'm at about 25% on the recovery, and I'm going to go to the tame. And I'm at 20% on the tame. So the recovery is basically boosting things that it thinks are missing from your mix, and taming is taming things that it thinks are too present in your mix. I'll then just combine the two. Which kind of looks aggressive, but then when we realize that we're actually showing a really zoomed in scale, if I zoom back out to normal scale, what I'm doing is very, very subtle indeed. So that's the first thing that I do, just to start focusing in on any potential problem areas. And this is one of the great things of working digitally in the box. Plugins like this allow us to access tools that are more intuitive than our ears in some ways. There's no way that I would be able to do that sort of fine level of smoothing of the mix myself. This plugin, which you can only use digitally, allows me to do that. Next in my signal chain, I'm using RESO from Mastering the Mix. And again, this is just going to analyze the mix that I play into it, and then it's going to give me suggestions as to what frequencies it thinks are resonating too much and tame those. So we're going to bring this in now. So you'll notice from both of those first two plugins, from both the Gullfoss and the RESO, they're very subtle. And mastering is about subtlety. It's about 0.5% here, 0.5% there, that's going to help add up, accumulate towards a better sounding mix in the end. But there's going to be no great sweeping move that's all of a sudden going to make your mix sound way better. So Gullfoss, RESO, then I'm going to Soothe. And I'm just using a preset from Soothe here, balanced to the Grammy Awards, which is just going to help kind of shift my mix dynamically. Again, it's listening to the mix and adjusting dependent upon what the mix is in order to work towards a kind of EQ balance that it knows works really well. So I'm going to bring that in. Let's start bypassed. So this is working in mid-side. It's giving a bit of an extra boost, a bit of an extra bump in the low end, smoothing kind of up the high end, but again, very, very subtle. And those first three plugins are all working dynamically, effectively, to help smooth and shape the mix towards something that is the commercial standard, if you like. Next in my plugin chain, I have this plugin here, Brainworks Digital V3. This is a mid-side equalizer, okay? So the left-hand section here is the mid section, the right-hand section here is the sides or stereo section, and this kind of central panel is universal, applies to everything. On the mid channel, I'm doing a gentle high pass at 30 Hertz, 12 dB per octave, and then I'm doing a low pass at 20 kilohertz, a bit more gently at 6 dB per octave. That's it on the mid channel. On the sides, I am doing a high pass at 120 Hertz, gentle slope, 6 dB per octave. And then I'm shelving at around 7K, 7.2 kilohertz with a 3 dB boost, just to get a bit more kind of shine from that. Then I'm doing two more things in this plugin. I'm widening a little here with the stereo width knob, and I'm also making my mix mono below 120 Hertz. Now, I'm pretty sure the mix is already mono below 120 Hertz, but I'm making sure in this plugin here. So let's start with it bypassed, and I'll bring it in. Again, it's about subtlety. Don't expect to hear something wildly different. Okay, so it's actually making my mix feel a little more focused with the mono maker. So it's just tightening up those low frequencies and giving me a bit more of that kind of sparkle and shine on the sides for two reasons. One, because I'm taking a little bit of it out from the center, and two, because I'm putting some of it in with this shelf. So there we go, that's in. Next in my signal chain, I've got Pro Q4. Now, all I'm doing here is I've identified some further kind of slightly resonant frequencies that I don't like personally. So I've kind of scanned through the mix, listening for these things, and I've gone, that I don't want to hear so much. And I've added these dynamic bands onto those frequency points. Now, you'll notice they're all on the mid channel. So they're only on the mid channel, not on the sides. And each one of them is set the same to do 1.5 dB of dynamic reduction in the spectral mode. So that's only available in the new version of Pro Q and Pro Q4, with a reasonably narrow Q of 4 here. So let's turn all of these off, and then we're going to bring them in. So they're really, really subtle. I mean, if we listen to them, you know, really subtle, but they're all in around this kind of muddy area of like 250 to 350, where you get that kind of throaty, gargly kind of sound. So that's what I'm doing there. Then I'm using Ozone for a little bit of kind of stereo enhancement, mostly just to narrow the center of the mix. You'll see this is very, very gentle. The center of the mix up to 120 hertz, which is where I had the mono maker in the V3 set, if you remember. This that low band, I'm just narrowing a little bit, hardly doing anything on the mid bands, and then the upper band above like 6K is just being widened very, very slightly. But again, very, very subtle. That to me is just helping even push those electric guitars out a little bit wider, make them sit a bit higher in the ear even, and give them a bit more sparkle. And that, in terms of the kind of equalizing and changing the sonic shape of it, is everything that I'm doing on the individual channel. These things here, this gain plugin and this directional mixer, are all automation that I'm doing on the channel. So here is the channel. This is the master fader on the channel. So that's my fade in, fade out of the whole track. If I drop down here, that's the gain plugin, and you'll see that I'm doing some very gentle automation of the overall level, which is before it goes into the dynamic processing. So that's to give me some subtle kind of lifts and boosts and cuts to each individual section. So the intro is down by a dB, the verse is down by half a dB, the bridge is down by a dB or whatever it is, so that I've got some subtle dynamic range going into my dynamic processing. It's important that I do it there rather than on the actual dynamic master bus, because then it applies to all of the tracks, and obviously things happen at different times in the different tracks. Likewise, I'm using the directional mixer, which is this plugin here, to adjust the overall width of the mix so that, for example, the intro, the verses are feeling narrower than the choruses. When it gets to the chorus, when the chorus hits, I want it to open up and feel really full and strong, whereas the verses can be a bit more controlled, a bit more contained. And I'm using a directional mixer to make those little automation moves, again, to give me some kind of expression and variety in the mix. I'm also automating the amount that I've got going on the parallel slam bus. So this section here, which is the kind of bridge, if you like, the fullest, most aggressive, loudest part, I'm just pushing up that parallel bus a little bit so that I've got a little bit more extra level that's going to go in and hit my dynamic processing on the master bus. So that's all of that. Now, before my things get into the master bus, which is where all of my dynamics processing is, you'll see that I've got this last gain plugin on every channel. That gain plugin allows me to adjust the gain of each individual song hitting the dynamics processing so that I can make sure those individual channels are being dynamically processed at the same kind of range. I don't want one song with its loudest section hitting my dynamics processing 3 dB harder than another song, because they're going to sound wildly different. I need to make sure that they're each hitting those dynamics processes at more or less the same input level. That's absolutely crucial to this method. Otherwise, running them all through the same dynamic chain doesn't work because they won't all be affected in the right way. Let's run through this chain then. The first thing I've got in this chain is BX Clipper from Brainworks. This is just in stereo mode, left and right, and I'm looking to get hopefully no more than kind of 3 dB of gain reduction on either channel. So the gain reduction will show over here. Let's have a look. Okay, cool. So I got up to like 2.9 dB of gain reduction. Absolutely happy with that. So just starting to tame, starting to control the transient peaks. Next, I'm going into FG Grey. This is an SSL style compressor. It's on a slow attack, auto release. The ratio is at 4:1. It's got a big high pass filter going on. So up to 124 hertz in this case is not going to be triggering the compressor. A little bit of makeup gain. Let's bring that in to our mix and see what it's doing. So barely moving the needle. It's barely twitching. In a louder section of the song, maybe. I don't know if this song will move it a little bit more. We'll see. Barely moving that needle. So, you know, it's more there for the additional character of the compressor that we get from using an SSL style bus compressor than it is for gain reduction. Yeah, we're getting a little bit of gain reduction, but it's more for the character that it imparts. After that, I've got the Shadow Hills mastering compressor. I'm not using the optical circuit up here. There's like 2 compressors in one here. It's got an optical circuit, which is like an LA style compressor. And then there's a discrete circuit down here, which is like a VCA style compressor. Then you've got different hardware models that are going to impart saturation, distortion to your mix. So let's turn off the hardware. Let's turn off the discrete compressor and we'll bring them in. So here we're going to see any gain reduction for our discrete circuit, which is this one. So you see that when I bring in that hardware, it's making the song louder because it's adding saturation, but it's also affecting how the discrete circuit is being hit. It's actually reducing the amount of gain reduction being done by that circuit because it's distorting the track more, it's saturating it more. The peaks are therefore being controlled more, and thus the dynamic range is being narrowed, and therefore the compressor is doing less. Love that. This plugin, by the way, I had in mid-side mode. So the left is the mid channel, the right is the side channel. Moving on, I've then got another clipper. This is Soft Clip from Apogee. It was free for a time. I don't know if it's still free, but it might be. And I'm looking to get just sort of no more than 2 little decibels of gain reduction here. Very, very small amount of gain reduction indeed. So again, just clipping, just shaving off a little bit more of that transient peak, just to control the dynamics a little bit more. As you can see through this process, it's just a little bit at a time, a little. There's no great big sweeping move that is fundamentally changing the character of the song. It's just doing a little bit at a time. Next, I'm going to Oxford Inflator. Now, this is going to do a lot, okay? It's effectively a saturation plugin. It's a distortion plugin. It sounds great. It's there to make mixes louder. I've got the band split mode on. So what that means is it's not just going to look at the whole mix together. It's going to analyze different bands of that mix. The effect is in, obviously, and it's also going to be clipping anything that goes above the clip threshold of 0 dB. So I've already done clipping, so I don't really want to do more clipping. So I'm going to make sure that I'm adjusting the input and the output gain so I'm not clipping on either of those things. It's a reasonably simple plugin, but you need to go and experiment with it yourself to find out what it is. Go and watch another tutorial on it. But basically, I've got the effect on full. I'm not adjusting the curve at all. So that's going to give me not too aggressive saturation. It's neither going to be kind of too soft and not doing very little. So it's just kind of in the middle there. And then I'm driving in 1.5 dB and compensating with the output. Let's A/B this. So, getting much louder at this point. I'm now sort of peaking at minus 0.4 dB. Let's see, out of interest, how loud I am now. So I'm at like minus 12 LUFS integrated. The short term was around there as well. The short term getting up to like minus 11.5 on the kind of stronger hits. So I'm by no means at a loud mix yet. Yeah, Spotify and other platforms say, we want your mix emitted at minus 14 dB LUFS integrated. In reality, all of the commercial stuff is much, much louder than that. So, Inflator is done. Next, I'm using Crafter. Crafter is from the same company that make the Gullfoss plugin. And again, I'm using this as multi-band saturation and clipping effectively. So I'm going to turn this plugin on. I'm going to bypass it. And then I'm going to introduce it so you can hear what it does. Again, making the mix louder for sure, but also helping me to kind of balance the different frequency points. You can see that I'm adjusting the low shift, the mid shift, and the high shift independently. I can change their frequency points here. I've got the drive here, and it's also engaging the clipping. So it's clipping at 0 dB. So it's making sure that nothing is going above the point of no return. Again, go and watch a tutorial on this plugin specifically. It's not very complicated, but it's easy to do badly. So, I love it. It's great. After that, this is the only instance of a kind of equalizing shape that I'm doing on my master bus. And this is an ear-friendly top preset. It's just to make sure there's no harshness, no kind of ringing left in these upper frequencies around like 5K and up. It's just making sure the top end is nice and smooth. So let's have it bypassed and we'll bring it in. So just really gently smoothing that top end again. And as I say, all these things are very, very subtle. Now, the next two plugins are where I'm going to get most of my loudness from. Obviously, I've added loudness at each of these stages. I'm now going to go into a limiter. This plugin is just called Limiter. It's by Mastering the Mix. And I've got the ceiling at 0 dB, so it's going to go all the way up to 0 dB. Auto release, it's on a slow attack. And it's going to be doing no more, hopefully, than 3 dB of gain reduction here. Let's have a look. Cool. So again, let's check that. How loud are we getting? So now we're up at about 8.5 dB LUFS integrated. So we're getting more towards a commercial level. But as you see, still not doing any more than 3 dB of gain reduction at a time, because I don't want to be doing anything too aggressively at any one point. The final plugin that I'm going into is Smart Limit. Smart Limit is great because it allows me to input a reference track that I want to use as the kind of benchmark for how loud I want to master to. Analyzes that, analyzes my mix and says, here are some good settings for you. So let's turn this on and let's see what's going on. I actually want that at -1, and here we go. So you'll see still 1.5 dB of gain reduction, more or less. On the multimeter, where am I at? Now I could push this master more, for sure. I could get it louder. I could go up to -7, even -6.5. Then it gets kind of super compressed and tight. Oh, and actually what I didn't have engaged through all of that was that parallel slam, because I was thinking that isn't as loud as I mastered it. So this should actually be getting up to around -7, which is where I thought. There it is, sitting around -7. So that's my whole mastering process as it is at the moment. If any of these plugins take your fancy, go and have a look, see if you can get them on offer. As I say always, I'm not affiliated with any of these. These are just the things that I'm using right now. I'll be back for you very soon with another video. In the meantime, ask any questions you've got in the comments, drop a like, make sure you're subscribed, all that sort of stuff. I'll see you again soon.